The fluorescent lights of the community center buzzed overhead like dying wasps, casting a sickly yellow glow over the rows of metal folding chairs. I sat in the back corner, my fingers tracing the frayed edge of my secondhand blazer, trying to make myself smaller, invisible. The divorce support group leader droned on about new beginnings and reclaiming your power, but her words felt hollow against the weight pressing down on my chest. 3 months. That's how long it had been since Marcus walked out, leaving behind nothing but divorce papers and a business on the verge of collapse. My father's business, the textile company that had been in our family for 3 generations, now drowning in debt because my ex-husband had systematically drained every account, manipulated every contract, and disappeared with his secretary to God knows where. I pressed my palms against my thighs, feeling the cheap fabric of my clearance rack pants. Everything about me screamed failure. My hair, pulled back in a messy bun because I couldn't afford my usual salon. My shoes, with the sole starting to separate on the left foot. My skin, pale and drawn from too many sleepless nights spent poring over bankruptcy documents. "Emma?" The group leader's voice cut through my thoughts. "Would you like to share?" I shook my head, throat tight. What would I say? That I was 28 and felt ancient? That my father looked at me with such disappointment it made me want to disappear? That the family business, the one thing that mattered to him more than anything, maybe even more than me, was dying because I'd been stupid enough to trust Marcus with the financial records? The meeting ended mercifully soon. I gathered my things, an ancient purse with a broken zipper, and pushed through the double doors into the cool October night. Rain had started to fall, of course it had, and I'd left my umbrella in the car I no longer owned. I pulled my blazer tighter and started walking toward the bus stop 3 blocks away. The streets of downtown were slick with rain, reflecting the neon signs of restaurants I could no longer afford. I kept my head down, counting my steps, trying not to think about the notice that had arrived that morning. Final warning. Liquidation proceedings would begin in 30 days, unless we could secure new capital. 30 days to save everything my grandfather had built, everything my father had poured his life into. I was so lost in my spiraling thoughts that I didn't notice the sleek black Mercedes until I'd already stepped off the curb. Tires squealed. I froze, rain pelting my face, blinded by headlights that seemed impossibly bright. Time slowed. That cliché people always talk about, but I'd never believed until that moment when I was certain I was about to die. The car stopped inches from my knees. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might crack a rib. I stumbled backward, my worn shoes slipping on the wet pavement, and would have fallen if someone hadn't caught my elbow. A security guard, massive and expressionless, steadied me with one hand while speaking rapidly into an earpiece with the other. "I'm sorry," I gasped, rain streaming down my face. "I wasn't looking. I'm so sorry." The back door of the Mercedes opened. He emerged like something from a different world entirely. Expensive Italian shoes touched the wet pavement first, followed by charcoal gray trousers with a knife-sharp crease, a black coat. Cashmere, probably. That moved like liquid shadow. And then his face. All sharp angles and dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything about me in a single sweep. "Are you hurt?" His voice was quiet, controlled, with an accent I couldn't quite place, something European maybe, smoothed by years in America, but still lurking around the edges of his words. "No, I'm fine. I tried to pull away from the security guard's grip, suddenly aware of how pathetic I must look. Soaked, cheap clothes clinging to my too thin frame, mascara probably running down my face. "I'm really sorry. I should have been paying attention." He stepped closer, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne, something dark and woody with notes of leather and smoke. It made my discount drugstore body spray feel even more embarrassing. He studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, and I noticed details, the perfect cut of his dark hair, slightly wet now from the rain, the way his jaw tightened when he looked at my face, the complete lack of warmth in his expression, yet somehow not coldness either. More like calculation. "Marcus Hartley's ex-wife," he said, and it wasn't a question. My blood turned to ice. "How do you—" "Get in the car." "What?" No, I don't even know you. Emma Hartley. He pronounced my name with careful precision. Owner of Hartley Textiles, currently facing bankruptcy due to your ex-husband's embezzlement. You have 30 days before liquidation proceedings begin. He tilted his head slightly, raindrops catching in his dark hair like diamonds. Am I incorrect? I couldn't breathe. The rain felt colder suddenly, or maybe that was just the fear creeping up my spine. Who are you? Someone who can help. He gestured to the open car door, where I could see buttery leather seats and warm light. Or you can walk to the bus stop and continue pretending you have any other options. Every instinct screamed at me to run. This was insane. This man, this stranger who knew everything about my private hell, was dangerous. I could see it in the way he held himself, the way the security guard watched him with the wariness of someone who'd seen what happened when orders weren't followed. I could smell it in the expensive cologne that probably cost more than my monthly rent, in the car that purred like a predator waiting. But 30 days. 30 days. And my father's life's work would be gone. 30 days. And the 50 employees who'd been loyal to my family for decades would lose their jobs. 30 days, and I would have to look my father in the eye and admit that I'd failed him completely. I don't get in cars with strangers, I said, but my voice shook. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Amusement, maybe, or satisfaction. Dante Moretti, he said. Now we're not strangers. The name meant nothing to me. Should it have? The way he said it suggested I should recognize it, should understand what it represented. But I was too tired, too desperate, too broken to care about decoding the subtext. What do you want? I asked. To discuss a business proposition. 5 minutes of your time, Miss Hartley. Surely even you can afford that. The casual cruelty of that last part stung. But he was right. What did I have to lose? My dignity was already in tatters. My savings account was empty. My future was a black hole of debt and failure. I looked at the bus stop 3 blocks away, then back at the warm interior of the Mercedes. At Dante Moretti, who watched me with the patience of a spider waiting for a fly to make the wrong move. 5 minutes, I heard myself say. His smile was small, controlled, and somehow more frightening than if he'd grinned widely. After you. The security guard released my arm. I climbed into the car, my wet clothes immediately soaking into the expensive leather. The door closed behind me with a heavy, final sound, like a vault sealing shut or a cage door locking. Dante slid in beside me, and suddenly the spacious interior felt suffocatingly small. He smelled even stronger in the enclosed space, and I was painfully aware of how I must smell. Rain and cheap soap and desperation. Another security guard sat in the front passenger seat, speaking quietly into a phone in what sounded like Italian. The driver pulled smoothly into traffic without waiting for instructions. Where are we going? I tried to keep my voice steady, somewhere private. Dante's eyes never left my face. You're shivering. I was. I hadn't noticed. He pressed a button and warm air began flowing from the vents, but it didn't touch the cold that had settled into my bones. How do you know about my business? I demanded, trying to find some anchor of control in this surreal situation. About Marcus? I make it my business to know things. He settled back against the leather, completely at ease while I perched on the edge of my seat like a bird ready to flee. Your ex-husband made some very poor decisions. He borrowed money from people who don't accept bankruptcy as an excuse for non-payment. Oh God. Are you a loan shark? That small smile again. I'm a businessman, Miss Hartley. Your ex-husband owes a significant debt. When he couldn't pay, he offered collateral, specifically information about Hartley Textiles and its financial vulnerabilities. The betrayal burned fresh, even though I should have been numb to it by now. Of course Marcus had sold us out. Of course he'd given our family's private information to criminals to cover his own ass. I can't pay his debts, I said flatly. I can barely pay my own rent. I'm not asking you to pay. Dante leaned forward slightly, and I caught the full force of those dark eyes. They were almost black, I realized, with tiny flecks of amber near the pupil. Beautiful and terrifying. I'm offering to clear his debt, save your business, and ensure Hartley Textiles not only survives but thrives. My heart stuttered. Why would you do that? In exchange for one thing, here it was. The trap. The catch. Nothing in life was free, especially not from men who rode in cars that cost more than most houses, and had security details that looked like they could snap necks without breaking a sweat. What? I whispered. The car turned smoothly into an underground parking garage, descending into levels of concrete and shadow. We were completely alone now, I realized. No witnesses. No help. Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between us. Something predatory and patient, and utterly certain of the outcome. "Marry me," he said. The world tilted. I actually laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. "You're insane." "I'm practical." The car stopped, but neither of us moved. "I need a wife. You need salvation. It's a simple transaction. Marriage isn't a transaction. Everything is a transaction, Miss Hartley. Love, loyalty, family, all of it can be bought and sold. I'm simply being honest about the terms." I should have demanded to be let out. Should have run screaming back to my miserable little life and figured something else out. But I sat there, trapped in his gaze, drowning in the scent of his cologne and the implications of his offer. "Why me?" My voice came out broken. "You could have anyone. Why would you want—" I gestured at myself, at my wet hair and cheap clothes and visible desperation. For the first time, something like emotion crossed his face. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and his eyes dropped to my left hand, where I still wore a thin gold band, because I couldn't afford to get it resized after losing weight from stress. "You're convenient," he said finally, "and you're desperate enough not to ask too many questions." The casual cruelty should have made me hate him. Instead, it just made me tired. At least he was honest. At least he wasn't pretending this was anything other than what it was, a business deal between two people who had something the other needed. "How long?" I asked. His eyebrows rose slightly. "You're considering it." "How long?" "1 year. After that, we divorce quietly. You keep the business, completely debt-free. I keep my respectability. And during that year, you live in my home. You appear with me at necessary functions. You play the role of devoted wife." His fingers drummed once against his knee, the first sign of anything less than perfect control. "And you don't ask questions about my business affairs. What kind of business are you in, Mr. Moretti?" The smile that curved his lips held no warmth. "The kind where asking questions is dangerous, Mrs. Hartley." Not yet. I wasn't. Not yet his wife. Not yet trapped in whatever gold-plated cage he was offering. But God help me. I was considering it. "I need to think." "You have 30 seconds. He glanced at an expensive watch. "After that, I withdraw my offer and you return to your regularly scheduled bankruptcy." "That's not enough time." 20 seconds. "You can't just—" 10 seconds. My father's face flashed through my mind. The employees who'd worked for us for decades. The legacy that would die if I didn't do something, anything, to save it. 5 seconds, Miss Hartley. I closed my eyes, took a breath that tasted like expensive leather and my own fear. "Yes," I whispered. When I opened my eyes, Dante Moretti was smiling, really smiling this time. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it made me feel like I'd just signed away something much more valuable than a year of my life. "Excellent," he said softly, and pressed a button that unlocked the doors. "Welcome to the family, Emma. The wedding happened 3 days later." 3 days. That's all the time I had to wrap my head around the fact that I was marrying a complete stranger who'd essentially purchased me like a piece of property. 3 days to sign a prenuptial agreement so thick it could have been used as a weapon, drafted by lawyers who looked at me with barely concealed pity. 3 days to pack up my miserable studio apartment and say goodbye to the life I'd known, however pathetic it had been. I didn't tell my father the truth. I couldn't. How could I explain that I'd agreed to marry a man I'd known for 72 hours to save his business? Instead, I called him from the burner phone Dante had given me. My old phone had been too vulnerable to tracking, apparently, and fed him a carefully constructed lie. "I met someone, Dad. I know it's fast, but after Marcus, I just want to be happy again." The hope in his voice had made me want to vomit. Emma, sweetheart, are you sure? After everything you've been through, I'm sure, I'd lied, staring at the empty walls of my apartment, at the life I was erasing. He's good to me. He's going to help with the business, too. We're going to be okay. That part, at least, wasn't entirely a lie. The morning after I'd agreed to Dante's proposal, a team of accountants had descended on Hartley Textiles like a well-dressed plague. By afternoon, the bankruptcy notice had been withdrawn. By evening, we had 3 new contracts with luxury brands I'd only dreamed of working with. My father had called me crying, actually crying, with joy. I'd stood in my bathroom and stared at my reflection, trying to recognize the woman who'd sold herself to save a business, trying to feel something other than numb. Now I stood in a private room at City Hall, wearing a cream-colored dress that had appeared in my apartment, along with a note in Dante's precise handwriting. Wear this. Car arrives at 2 p.m. The dress fit perfectly, which meant he'd somehow acquired my measurements. I didn't want to think about how. You look beautiful, said a woman's voice behind me. I turned to find an elegant older woman in a burgundy suit, her silver hair styled in a perfect chignon. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm Lucia, Mr. Moretti's assistant. Assistant, right. The way she said it made it clear she was much more than that. She'd been the one to deliver the dress, to go over the expectations for the ceremony, to explain in excruciating detail how I was to behave at all times as Dante's wife. Never contradict him in public. Never ask about his schedule. Never, under any circumstances, mention his business affairs to anyone. She'd paused, studying me with eyes that had seen too much, and never try to leave without his permission. That last one had made my stomach turn. I'm not a prisoner. Of course not, Lucia had said smoothly. You're his wife. There's a difference. Now she adjusted my veil, a simple piece of tool that Dante had probably paid more for than my monthly rent, and stepped back to assess me. He's waiting. My hands were shaking. I clasped them together, feeling the absence of my old wedding ring. I'd finally taken it off last night, leaving it on the bathroom counter of my apartment like a shedskin. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered. Lucia's expression softened, just slightly. You already did, child. The moment you got in his car, she was right. This ceremony was just a formality. I'd sealed my fate 3 nights ago in the back of that Mercedes, when I'd been too desperate and broken to see the cage door closing. The walk to the ceremony room felt endless. My heels clicked against marble floors that probably cost more than my father's house. Security guards stood at every corner, speaking into earpieces, watching everything. Was this my life now? Constant surveillance, constant vigilance. The doors opened, and there he was. Dante stood at the front of the small room, hands clasped behind his back, looking every inch the powerful businessman in a black suit that had definitely been custom-made. No tux, no flowers, no romance, just efficiency and control. 2 men flanked him, more security, their eyes constantly scanning. A judge waited behind a simple podium, looking uncomfortable. No guests, no family, no witnesses except the people on Dante's payroll. My feet wanted to stop, to turn around and run, but Lucia's hand pressed gently against my lower back, propelling me forward. 1 step, another, until I was standing beside Dante, close enough to smell his cologne again, that scent that had haunted my dreams for 3 nights. He looked down at me, his dark eyes unreadable. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I had a backup plan, said so casually, as if discussing the weather, as if he hadn't just admitted he would have forced me here somehow. The judge cleared his throat. Shall we begin? It was the shortest wedding ceremony in history. No personal vows, no meaningful glances, no tears of joy, just legal words spoken in a monotone while I tried to remember how to breathe. When it came time to exchange rings, Dante produced a platinum band embedded with diamonds that caught the light like trapped stars. Your turn, the judge prompted. I stared blankly. No one had told me I needed a ring for him. Dante's lips curved slightly. He pulled a simple platinum band from his pocket and handed it to me. Here. Of course he'd thought of everything. I took the ring with trembling fingers and slipped it onto his hand. It fit perfectly, naturally. His hand was warm, calloused in unexpected places. A working man's hand, despite the expensive suit. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Dante's eyes met mine. I saw the question there, the moment of consideration. Then his hand cupped my face with surprising gentleness, and he leaned down. The kiss was nothing like I'd expected. Soft, controlled, over almost before it began. But in that brief moment, with his lips against mine and his thumb brushing my cheekbone, I felt something shift in my chest. Not attraction. I wasn't ready for that, but awareness. This was real. This was happening. When he pulled back, his expression revealed nothing. "Mrs. Moretti," he said quietly, testing out the name. "Mrs. Moretti. Not Emma Hartley anymore, not even Emma Moretti, just his." The paperwork was signed in silence. The judge left quickly, as if afraid to linger. Lucia appeared with my bouquet. I hadn't even noticed I'd been holding flowers during the ceremony, and took it away. One of the security guards handed Dante a folder, whispering something in Italian. "We need to go," Dante said, his hand settling possessively on my lower back. "There's a dinner tonight. Several of my business associates will be there." "Tonight? But I thought—" "You thought what? That we'd have a honeymoon?" His smile was sharp. "This is a business arrangement, Emma. The sooner you're seen as my wife, the better." He guided me out of the building, his hand never leaving my back. The touch should have been comforting, protective. Instead, it felt like a brand, marking me as his property. Outside, the same black Mercedes waited, surrounded by 2 other identical cars. "Security protocol," Dante explained, noticing my stare. "We rotate vehicles, never the same route twice. Why do you need so much security?" His eyes met mine as he helped me into the middle car. "Because people would very much like to see me dead, Emma. And now, by extension, they'd like to see you dead too. Welcome to marriage." The door closed before I could respond. He slid in beside me, and the convoy began to move in perfect synchronization. I watched the city pass by through tinted windows, feeling like I was seeing it for the first time. Or maybe seeing it for the last time as a free woman. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Home." Home. The word felt foreign. Home had been my cramped studio with the broken heater and the stain on the ceiling. This, whatever this was, wasn't home. We drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city behind and entering an area of sprawling estates hidden behind high walls and ancient trees. The Mercedes turned onto a private road, approaching gates that looked like they could withstand a military assault. They opened silently, and we drove through into another world. The house, no, mansion, rose before us like something from a movie. Stone and glass and impossible wealth, surrounded by manicured grounds that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. Lights glowed from windows, warm and inviting, a complete lie about what this place really was. A prison. A beautiful, expensive prison. The car stopped at the front entrance, where a line of staff waited. My stomach churned. How many people were going to witness my humiliation? Dante exited first, then offered his hand to help me out. I took it because refusing would have been childish, and I was trying very hard to hold on to some shred of dignity. His fingers wrapped around mine, warm and certain, and didn't let go as we approached the staff. "This is Emma," he announced. "My wife. She's to be given whatever she needs, whenever she needs it. Her word is as good as mine." I seriously doubted that, but the staff nodded respectfully. An older man who introduced himself as Vincent, the house manager, gave me a slight bow. A younger woman, Maria, the head housekeeper, smiled warmly. There were others, too many to remember, all watching me with varying degrees of curiosity and pity. "I'll show you to our room," Dante said, leading me inside. Our room. Of course. We were married now. Married people shared rooms, shared beds, shared lives. The interior of the house was even more intimidating than the exterior. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, art that was probably worth more than my father's entire business. Everything was elegant, expensive, and utterly impersonal. No family photos, no personal touches, nothing that suggested an actual human lived here. We climbed a curved staircase to the second floor, walked down a hallway lined with closed doors, and stopped at the end. Dante opened the door and gestured for me to enter first. The bedroom was enormous. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, dressed in charcoal gray linens that probably had a thread count higher than my credit score. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the grounds, now dark except for subtle landscape lighting. A sitting area, a fireplace, doors leading to what I assumed was a bathroom and closet, and my suitcase, sitting on a bench at the foot of the bed, the same battered suitcase I'd owned since college, looking pathetically out of place among all this luxury. "The closet has been stocked with appropriate clothing," Dante said, loosening his tie. "Lucia selected everything based on your measurements. If anything doesn't fit or suit you, let her know." "Appropriate clothing," I repeated numbly. "For someone in your position, my wife can't be seen in." He gestured vaguely at my cream dress, which I now realized was probably the nicest thing I'd owned. "You'll need better." The casual dismissal stung. I crossed my arms, suddenly defensive. "There's nothing wrong with what I wear." "There is when you're married to me." He shrugged off his jacket, draping it over a chair with careless grace. "Image matters, Emma. Everything about you now reflects on me. I'm not a doll you can dress up." He turned to face me fully, and I saw something dangerous flicker in his eyes. "No, you're my wife. Which means you'll dress appropriately, behave appropriately, and represent me appropriately. That was the deal. The deal was to save my business." "The deal!" he interrupted, his voice dropping to something that made my skin prickle. "Was everything I say it is. You signed the papers. You took the ring. You said the vows." He stepped closer, and I fought the urge to back away. "Did you think this would be easy? That you could take my money and my protection without giving anything in return? I gave you a year of my life. You gave me the illusion of normalcy, of respectability, a wife, a family, a legitimate businessman instead of—" He stopped himself, jaw clenching. "You have no idea what you're part of now." "Then tell me." The words burst out before I could stop them. "Tell me what you really do. Tell me why you need so much security. Tell me why a man like you would want a wife at all." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he moved, so fast I didn't have time to react, backing me against the wall with his body, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. "You want the truth?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but it resonated through my entire body. "I import and export goods. I own legitimate businesses, and some that are less legitimate. I have friends in very high places, and enemies in very low ones. People respect me because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. And I needed a wife, because the old families don't trust unmarried men. They think we're unstable, dangerous." "Are you?" I breathed. "Dangerous?" His smile was slow, predatory. "Extremely." His hand came up to rest against the wall beside my head, caging me in. "But not to you. Never to you. You're mine now, Emma. Mine to protect. Mine to keep safe." His other hand traced down my arm, leaving goosebumps in its wake. "Mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a strange heat through my veins. No one had ever looked at me the way Dante was looking at me now, like I was something precious and dangerous all at once. "I need to change," I managed, my voice embarrassingly breathy. "For this dinner." He studied me for another heartbeat, then stepped back, releasing me from the cage of his body. Lucia left options in the closet. Wear the black dress. Diamonds, not pearls. And Emma. He waited until I met his eyes. "Don't embarrass me tonight." Then he was gone, disappearing through a door I assumed led to a bathroom, leaving me alone in this strange new prison of silk and shadows. I sagged against the wall, trying to catch my breath, trying to understand what I'd just agreed to, what I'd just become. Mrs. Dante Moretti, wife to a man who spoke of danger and possession with the same casual ease most people discussed the weather. And God help me, part of me, some dark, desperate part I didn't want to acknowledge, had thrilled at the way he'd said, "mine." The black dress Lucia had chosen was a work of art and torture combined. It hugged every curve I had, and some I didn't know I possessed, ending just above my knees in a way that was sophisticated rather than provocative. The neckline dipped lower than anything I'd ever worn, and the fabric felt like liquid silk against my skin. I stared at myself in the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. The diamonds Dante had specified sat in a velvet box on the vanity, a necklace that probably cost more than my father's house. With matching earrings that caught the light like captured stars, my hands shook as I fastened them, the cold metal settling against my collarbone like a collar. This was my life now, playing dress-up for a man who spoke of ownership like it was romance. "Almost ready?" Dante's voice came from the bedroom. I took one last look at myself. Hair styled in soft waves, courtesy of a YouTube tutorial. Makeup applied with trembling hands. Diamonds glittering at my throat, and opened the bathroom door. He'd changed into a different suit. This one midnight blue that made his dark eyes look almost black. His gaze swept over me from head to toe, lingering on the necklace, the dress, my face. Something shifted in his expression. Approval, possession. Something darker I couldn't name. "Perfect," he said quietly, and crossed the room to stand before me. His fingers brushed against my collarbone, adjusting the necklace slightly. The touch was impersonal, clinical, but it sent heat racing through my veins anyway. "Remember what I told you. These people are associates, not friends. They'll smile and congratulate us while looking for any weakness to exploit." What am I supposed to say? As little as possible. His hand moved to my chin, tilting my face up to meet his eyes. "Stay close to me. Don't wander off. And if anyone asks you personal questions, deflect. You're here to be seen, not heard." The casual sexism should have made me angry. Instead, I just felt tired. "Anything else? Or is that the full list of ways I'm supposed to be a good little trophy wife?" His lips curved slightly. "You have fire. Good. You'll need it." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" The dinner was held at a restaurant I'd passed 100 times but never dreamed of entering. The kind of place where reservations required a waiting list measured in months, where the wine list probably cost more than most people's cars. We arrived in the Mercedes, flanked by security cars that peeled off to park discreetly nearby. Dante helped me from the car, his hand settling possessively on my lower back as we entered. The maitre d' greeted him by name, leading us to a private room where a table for 12 had been set with china so delicate I was afraid to breathe near it. 7 people were already seated, their conversations dying the moment we entered. I felt their eyes cataloging everything. My dress, my jewelry, my face, judging, calculating. Dante, a large man with silver hair, stood, arms spread wide. "And this must be your bride. My God, the rumors don't do her justice. Emma, this is Antonio Russo. He handles my shipping interests." Dante's hand pressed more firmly against my back, a silent reminder to smile and play nice. I extended my hand, which Antonio took and kissed with practiced charm. "A pleasure, Mrs. Moretti." We were all shocked when Dante announced his marriage. He's been stubbornly single for so long. "When you find the right person, timing becomes irrelevant," Dante said smoothly, pulling out my chair. The lie rolled off his tongue with practiced ease. The others introduced themselves one by one. Carlos, who dealt in imports. Marina, who owned a chain of luxury hotels. Vincent and his wife Sophie, whose business interests remained deliberately vague. And finally, a younger man named Marco, who watched me with undisguised interest that made my skin crawl. "So romantic," Marina said once we were all seated and wine had been poured. "How did you two meet?" I froze, the wine glass halfway to my lips. We hadn't discussed this, hadn't coordinated our story. Dante's hand found my knee under the table, squeezing once. A warning or reassurance, I couldn't tell. "Emma quite literally walked into my life," he said, his voice warm with false affection. "I was leaving a meeting. She wasn't watching where she was going. And suddenly there she was. I took one look at her and knew." The table made appreciative sounds. I smiled, hoping it looked genuine, and took a sip of wine that tasted like it cost more than my monthly salary used to. "Love at first sight," Sophie sighed. "How wonderful. And so fast. You must have swept her off her feet, Dante. I can be persuasive when I want something. His eyes met mine across the table, dark and unreadable. And I wanted Emma. The possessiveness in his voice made several of the women at the table fan themselves. If only they knew the truth, that he'd essentially purchased me to maintain appearances, that this whole romantic story was as fake as the smile I wore. Dinner progressed through multiple courses, each more elaborate than the last. I picked at my food, too nervous to eat, hyper-aware of Dante beside me. His hand occasionally touched my arm, my shoulder, my hand, small gestures that screamed "mine" to everyone watching. Playing the role of devoted husband with an ease that suggested he'd done this before. "Your father's business," Antonio said during the main course. "Textiles, yes?" I hear it was struggling. My fork clattered against the plate. Dante's hand covered mine immediately, warm and steady. "Was struggling," Dante corrected. "But with proper management and new contracts, Hartley Textiles is positioned to become a leader in luxury fabric production." "How fortunate that you married such a savvy businessman," Marina said to me. "I'm sure your father is thrilled." "He's very happy," I managed, the lie tasting like ash. Marco leaned forward, his eyes lingering on my neckline. "Tell me, Emma. May I call you Emma? What's it like being married to the most powerful man in the city?" Dante's grip on my hand tightened almost painfully. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Marco," he said quietly, and that single word held enough warning to make the younger man pale. I meant no disrespect. Emma is adjusting beautifully to her new life. Dante's thumb stroked across my knuckles, a gesture that looked affectionate but felt like a claim. "Though I suspect the adjustment is easier when you're married to the right person." The conversation moved on, but I could feel Marco's eyes returning to me throughout the meal, could see the calculation there, the wondering if Dante's new wife might be a weakness to exploit. By the time dessert arrived, my face hurt from smiling, and my head pounded from the effort of saying nothing while appearing engaged. Dante seemed completely at ease, discussing business matters I didn't understand in careful euphemisms that meant nothing and everything. "Excuse me," I murmured, during a lull in conversation. "I need to powder my nose." Dante's hand on my wrist stopped me from standing. "Lucia will accompany you." I hadn't even noticed Lucia sitting at a small table near the entrance. She rose immediately, a shadow in burgundy, and waited by the door. "I can find the bathroom myself," I said, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. "Humor me." His eyes held mine, and I saw the steel beneath the civilized veneer. This wasn't a request. I extracted my wrist from his grip and followed Lucia into the hallway, my heels clicking against marble floors. The bathroom was predictably opulent, all gold fixtures and fresh flowers and hand towels that were probably more expensive than my entire wardrobe used to be. Lucia stood by the door while I locked myself in a stall and tried to remember how to breathe. This was my life now, being watched, controlled, displayed like a prize at a dog show. I pressed my palms against my eyes, fighting back tears that would ruin my makeup. "It gets easier," Lucia's voice filtered through the stall door. "Does it?" I didn't bother hiding the bitterness. "You learn to play the role, to separate yourself from it, to survive." I emerged from the stall and moved to the sink, washing my hands with soap that smelled like lavender and lies. In the mirror, I watched Lucia watching me. "How long have you worked for him?" I asked. 15 years. "And in 15 years, has he ever mentioned why he suddenly needed a wife?" Lucia's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. "Mr. Moretti's reasons are his own. But I can tell you this. He doesn't do anything without careful consideration. If he chose you, there's a reason beyond what he's told you." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, the bathroom door opened and Marina swept in, her smile sharp as a blade. "There you are. I hope to catch you alone." She touched up her lipstick, watching me in the mirror. "I wanted to give you some advice, woman to woman." "That's kind of you," I said carefully. "Dante Moretti is not an easy man to be married to. He's possessive, controlling, dangerous." She capped her lipstick with a decisive click. but he's also fiercely protective of what's his. As long as you remember your place, you'll be fine. My place. Like I was a belonging, not a person. And what place is that? I asked, unable to help myself. Marina's smile widened, at his side, in his bed, bearing his children eventually, playing the perfect wife while he runs his empire. She leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming. But never, ever make the mistake of thinking you're his equal. Men like Dante don't marry for love, dear. They marry for legacy, for heirs, for the appearance of normalcy that makes their business dealings smoother. I should get back, I said, my voice hollow. Of course. Wouldn't want to keep your husband waiting. She patted my arm with false sympathy. Welcome to the family, Emma. I followed Lucia back to the private room, Marina's words echoing in my head. Children. Heirs. I hadn't even thought that far ahead. Had been so focused on surviving the next year that I hadn't considered what Dante might actually expect from this marriage. The sight of him stopped me in the doorway. He was leaning back in his chair, a glass of whiskey in one hand, listening to Antonio tell some story that had the table laughing. But his eyes found me immediately, tracking my movement as I crossed the room. They darkened when they noticed my expression, and I saw the question there. I shook my head slightly. Later. His jaw tightened, but he returned his attention to Antonio's story, his hand reaching out to pull me back into my chair. His arm settled around my shoulders, heavy and warm and possessive. Everything all right? He murmured against my ear. Fine. Liar. His lips brushed my temple, a gesture that looked affectionate to everyone watching, but felt like a brand. Tell me later what upset you. The dinner finally, mercifully, ended near midnight. Goodbyes were exchanged, promises to get together soon that I hoped were empty. Marco tried to kiss my hand again, but Dante's warning glare stopped him cold. We left in a procession of security and expensive cars, the city lights blurring past tinted windows. You did well, Dante said, once we were alone in the back seat. I barely said anything. Exactly. He loosened his tie, looking tired for the first time all night. Marina cornered you in the bathroom. What did she say? Of course he knew. Of course he had people watching. She gave me advice on being your wife. Which was, remember my place, play my role, give you heirs. His hand stilled on his tie. I see. Is that what you expect? I turned to face him, anger finally breaking through the numbness. Children? You didn't mention that in your list of requirements. We can discuss it after the year is over, he said carefully. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight. He met my eyes, his expression unreadable. You're exhausted. This has been a difficult day. Let's not make it worse with arguments about hypotheticals. He was right. Damn him, I was exhausted. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. I turned back to the window, watching the city give way to suburban estates, to the prison of his mansion. When we arrived, Dante helped me from the car with the same possessive touch I was beginning to recognize as his signature. Inside, the house was quiet, the staff having retired for the night. We climbed the stairs in silence, entered the bedroom that was now ours, and stood there awkwardly, like strangers who'd just realized they'd have to share a bed. I'll take the couch, I said, gesturing to the sitting area. Don't be ridiculous. The bed is enormous. We can share it like adults. I'm not sleeping with you. His eyebrow rose. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to sleep in the same bed. There's a difference. Heat flooded my cheeks. I know that. I just meant... I know what you meant. He was already unbuttoning his shirt, revealing a white undershirt beneath and muscles I tried very hard not to notice. We're married, Emma. People will expect us to share a room, share a bed. The staff talks. We need to maintain appearances even here. So this is just another performance, I said bitterly. Everything is a performance. He shrugged off his shirt, draping it over a chair. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. I wanted to argue, to insist on the couch, to maintain some boundary between us. But I was so tired, I could barely stand, and the bed did look incredibly inviting after the day I'd had. Fine, I muttered, and grabbed pajamas from my suitcase, a modest cotton set that covered everything. "There's sleepwear in the closet," Dante said. "Lucia selected—" "I don't want what Lucia selected. I want my own clothes." He raised his hands in surrender. "As you wish." I changed in the bathroom, taking my time, trying to prepare myself for the reality of sharing a bed with this stranger who was now my husband. When I emerged, Dante was already under the covers, reading something on his phone. He'd left the bedside lamp on my side turned on. I slipped under the covers, staying as far to my side as possible. The bed was indeed enormous. I could have fit 3 of me across it. But I was still hyper-aware of him beside me, of his warmth, his breathing, his presence. "Emma," he said into the darkness after I'd turned off my lamp. "What?" "Thank you. For tonight. I know it wasn't easy." The unexpected kindness made my throat tight. "You're welcome." Silence settled over us. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had changed in less than a week, about the life I'd left behind and the one I'd stepped into, about the man lying beside me, who spoke of possession and protection with equal conviction. "Dante," I whispered. Are you going to tell me what you really do? What I've gotten myself into?" Long pause. Then, "Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Some things are safer left unknown." "And if I insist, then you'll learn why people are afraid of me." His voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made the threat worse. "Sleep, Emma. Tomorrow we start building our life together. Our life. As if this was real. As if we were a real couple instead of 2 people bound by contracts and desperation." I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Tried not to think about the warm body beside me, or the ring on my finger, or the diamonds still at my throat because I'd forgotten to take them off. Tried not to wonder what I'd really signed up for when I'd said, "I do," to a man whose eyes held secrets dark enough to drown in. I woke to an empty bed and sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close. For a disorienting moment, I didn't know where I was. The room was too large, the bed too soft, everything too perfect. Then memory crashed back. The wedding, the dinner, Dante's body beside mine in the darkness, close enough to touch, but worlds away. My husband. The word still felt foreign, like trying on clothes that didn't quite fit. I found a note on his pillow, written in that precise handwriting I was beginning to recognize. "Had to leave early. Lucia will help you settle in. Make yourself at home. D. Make myself at home. In a mansion that felt like a museum, filled with staff who watched me with curiosity and pity. Right." A soft knock at the door made me pull the covers up. "Come in." Maria, the head housekeeper, entered with a tray. "Good morning, Mrs. Moretti. Mr. Moretti asked me to bring you breakfast." The smell of coffee and fresh pastries made my stomach growl. I hadn't eaten much at dinner, too nervous to do more than push food around my plate. "Thank you," I said, taking the tray. "Maria, you don't have to call me Mrs. Moretti. Emma is fine." She smiled, but shook her head. "Mr. Moretti was very specific. You're to be addressed properly." Her eyes softened. "But between us, when no one else is around, I can call you Emma if you like." After she left, I ate mechanically, staring out at grounds that stretched farther than I could see. Gardens, a pool, what looked like a greenhouse in the distance, all of it beautiful and cold and utterly foreign. Lucia arrived an hour later, all business in a crisp navy suit. "Good. You're up. We have a busy day ahead." "Doing what?" "Getting you properly situated." She opened the closet, revealing a wardrobe that had appeared overnight. Dresses, suits, casual wear, all in my size, all expensive enough to make my eyes water. "First, we'll go over your schedule. Dante has several events this week where you'll need to appear. Then we'll discuss household management, security protocols, and your new responsibilities." "I have responsibilities?" "You're the lady of the house now. That comes with certain expectations." She pulled out a tablet, scrolling through what looked like a detailed itinerary. "There's a charity gala on Friday, dinner with the Russos on Saturday, Sunday brunch with Dante's mother." I nearly choked on my coffee. "His mother? Didn't he mention her?" Lucia's expression suggested she knew he hadn't. "Francesca Moretti. She lives in the guest house on the property. She's traditional, old world values. She'll expect to meet you formally. Great. Another performance, another test I was bound to fail. The day passed in a blur of information I struggled to retain. Security codes for the house, names and faces of staff members. Which rooms were off limits? Dante's office, the basement level, the west wing. Emergency protocols that sounded more appropriate for a military installation than a home. If there's ever a breach, Lucia explained, demonstrating the panic button hidden in the bedroom. You press this and stay put. Don't try to run. Don't try to hide. The security team will come to you. A breach, I repeated numbly. Like someone breaking in? Among other things. She moved on before I could ask what other things might constitute an emergency. Now, about your access to funds. Dante has set up an account in your name. The card is in the drawer of your nightstand. There's no limit, but all purchases over $10,000 will be flagged for review. Review by who? Dante's financial team. It's standard security protocol. They need to ensure no one is attempting to compromise you through financial manipulation. Everything kept circling back to security, to danger, to the unspoken reality that I'd married a man whose life required this level of protection. I thought about asking again what Dante really did, but Lucia's expression suggested the answer would be the same. Safer not to know. By late afternoon, my head was spinning. Lucia finally left, promising to return tomorrow to discuss appropriate charitable involvement. I wandered the house, trying to map it in my mind, trying to find some corner that felt less like a display and more like a home. I found myself in what appeared to be a library. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes in multiple languages. A fireplace dominated one wall, cold now in the autumn warmth. Windows overlooked the back gardens, where I could see security guards doing their rounds. Beautiful, isn't it? I spun around to find an elderly woman standing in the doorway. She was small, elegant, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun and dark eyes that assessed me with uncomfortable intensity. She wore all black, expensive but understated, and carried herself with the kind of authority that came from decades of being obeyed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude, I started. This is your home now. You can't intrude on your own property. She moved into the room with surprising grace, her eyes never leaving my face. I am Francesca Moretti, Dante's mother. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Moretti, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were here. Dante didn't mention... My son rarely mentions anything important. She settled into a leather chair like a queen claiming her throne. Sit, child. Let me look at you properly. I perched on the edge of the sofa across from her, feeling like I was being evaluated for purchase. Her eyes cataloged everything. My hair, still messy from sleep. My face, bare of makeup. The jeans and simple sweater I'd put on from my old wardrobe instead of the expensive clothes in the closet. So, she said finally, her accent heavier than Dante's, carrying the weight of old Italy. You are the woman my son married without telling his mother, without a proper engagement, without the blessing of family. It happened very quickly, I offered weakly. Too quickly. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Dante has never acted impulsively. Everything he does is calculated, planned, executed with precision. So I wonder, what calculation led him to you? The bluntness stole my breath. I'm sorry? Don't apologize. Answer the question. She leaned forward slightly. Why did my son marry a woman he barely knows? A woman with nothing to offer but a failing business and desperation. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Maybe you should ask him. I'm asking you. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. Did you seduce him? Trap him somehow? No. The word came out too loud, too defensive. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. Your son approached me. He offered a business arrangement. I accepted. That's all. A business arrangement. She sat back, her expression unreadable. At least you're honest about it. That's more than I expected. Her eyes drifted to my left hand, to the ring that probably cost more than my father's annual salary. You wear his ring. You sleep in his bed. But do you understand what you've married into? I'm beginning to, I said quietly. No, you're not. She stood with surprising speed, crossing to the window. The Moretti family has rules, girl. Traditions that go back generations. Loyalty is everything. Betrayal is met with consequences you cannot imagine. And family is sacred above all else. I understand. Do you? She turned back to face me, and I saw something almost like pity in her dark eyes. Can you give him children? Strong sons to carry on the family name? The question hit like a physical blow. We haven't discussed. Of course you haven't. My son is too proud to admit he needs anything from anyone. She moved closer, her gaze intense. But I will tell you what he won't. The old families are watching, waiting to see if this marriage is legitimate or just another one of Dante's manipulations. They want proof. An heir would provide that proof. My hands were shaking. I clasped them together to hide it. Mrs. Moretti, your son and I barely know each other. We've been married less than 2 days. The idea of children is inevitable if you want to survive in this world. She reached out, her hand cold as she gripped my chin, forcing me to meet her eyes. You seem like a smart girl. Desperate. Yes, but smart. So let me be clear. My son did not marry you for love. He married you because he needed a wife, and you were convenient. But if you want to keep the protection that comes with his name, if you want your precious family business to remain solvent, you will give him what he needs. She released me, and I stumbled back, my heart pounding. Think about it, Francesca said, moving toward the door. And welcome to the family, Emma. I hope you're stronger than you look. You'll need to be. She left me standing there, shaking, her words echoing in my mind. Children, heirs, proof of legitimacy, as if I was livestock being evaluated for breeding potential. I sank onto the sofa, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. This was my life now, being assessed by cold-eyed women who saw me as nothing more than a vessel for the next generation. Being controlled by a man who spoke of ownership like it was romance. Being trapped in a golden cage with no way out. The sound of a car pulling up outside drew me to the window, the black Mercedes flanked by security vehicles. My pulse quickened as I watched Dante emerge, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder, looking tired and somehow dangerous all at once. He glanced up at the house and saw me in the window. Even from this distance, I felt the impact of his gaze. He said something to one of the guards, then headed inside. I should have stayed in the library, maintained some dignity. Instead, I found myself moving toward the foyer, drawn by some magnetic pull I didn't want to examine too closely. He was halfway up the stairs when I appeared at the top. He stopped, his eyes tracking over me in that assessing way he had. You met my mother, he said. Not a question. How did you... You have that look. Like you've been told exactly how little you matter. He continued up the stairs, loosening his tie as he moved. What did she say? That I need to give you sons to prove this marriage is real. His jaw clenched. Francesca has traditional views. Is that what you want? I demanded, anger finally breaking through the fear and exhaustion. Children? Is that part of this business arrangement you forgot to mention? He reached the top of the stairs, standing close enough that I could smell his cologne, could see the fatigue around his eyes. What I want, he said quietly, is for you to stop letting my mother intimidate you. You're my wife. That puts you above her in this household hierarchy, whether she likes it or not. That doesn't answer my question. No, he agreed. It doesn't. He moved past me, heading toward our bedroom. I need to shower and change. We have dinner reservations at 8. We just had dinner last night, and we'll have dinner again tonight and tomorrow and the next night, until people stop questioning whether this marriage is real. He paused at the bedroom door, looking back at me. This is the life you agreed to, Emma. I suggest you get used to it. He disappeared into the room, leaving me standing in the hallway, fury and frustration warring in my chest. I wanted to scream at him, to demand real answers, to tell him exactly what I thought of his mother and his manipulations and his casual dismissal of my feelings. Instead, I followed him into the bedroom, watching as he shrugged off his shirt and moved toward the bathroom. The muscles in his back flexed as he moved, and I saw scars, old ones, silvered with age. Violence written on his skin. Dante? I said before I could stop myself. He turned, shirtless, his hand on the bathroom doorknob. What? Your mother called me desperate, said I had nothing to offer you. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. And? Was she right? He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides, backing me against the wall just like he had our first night. But this time, his hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. My mother, he said softly, sees the world in terms of bloodlines and legacy. She doesn't understand that sometimes the most valuable things can't be measured in money or status. His other hand settled on my waist, warm through the thin fabric of my sweater. You offered me something I couldn't buy, Emma. Normalcy. The appearance of a real marriage. A real life. That's worth more than you know. But it's not real, I whispered. Isn't it? His thumb traced my lower lip, and my breath caught. We're legally married. We share a home, a bed, a name. We attend dinners and smile for the cameras and play our roles. At what point does the performance become reality? When there are actual feelings involved. And who says there aren't? He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. You feel something when I touch you. I see it in your eyes, in the way you respond to me. Fear, yes, but also something else. Something you don't want to acknowledge. He was right, damn him. My body betrayed me every time he got close, pulse racing, skin heating, some primal part of me responding to his proximity in ways I didn't want to admit. That's just biology, I managed. It doesn't mean anything, doesn't it? His lips brushed the corner of my mouth, not quite a kiss, but close enough to make me shiver. Get dressed for dinner, Emma. Wear the red dress, and leave your hair down. Then he was gone, disappearing into the bathroom, leaving me trembling against the wall and hating myself for wanting him to come back. I dressed in the red dress he'd specified, another creation by Lucia that hugged every curve and made me feel exposed and powerful all at once. Diamond earrings, heels that added 3 inches to my height, makeup applied with shaking hands. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. This woman was elegant, expensive, confident. Everything I wasn't. Everything Dante needed me to be. He emerged from the bathroom in a black suit that made him look even more dangerous than usual. His eyes darkened when he saw me, tracking over every inch of the dress in a way that made heat pool low in my belly. Perfect, he murmured, and offered his arm. Dinner was at another exclusive restaurant, this time with a couple named Alessandro and Gianna, who owned half the real estate in the city. They were charming, friendly, and I didn't trust them for a second, especially Gianna, who watched Dante with the eyes of a woman who'd once had him and missed it. So wonderful that Dante finally settled down, she purred, her hand lingering on his arm just a bit too long. We were all beginning to think he'd be a bachelor forever. I was waiting for the right woman, Dante said smoothly, his hand finding mine under the table and squeezing. A reminder, a warning. Play the role. And now you've found her, Alessandro said, raising his wine glass. To new beginnings. We toasted. We ate. We smiled and laughed and pretended this was all real. And through it all, Dante's hand stayed on my knee, possessive and warm, a constant reminder of who I belonged to now. When we finally left, close to midnight, I was exhausted from the effort of maintaining my mask. In the car, I sagged against the leather seats, my eyes closing. You did well, Dante said quietly. Stop telling me that. Why? Because it makes me feel like a performing dog getting a treat for doing tricks. I opened my eyes, turning to look at him in the dim light of the car. I'm not your pet, Dante. I'm not your possession. I'm a person who deserves respect. You have my respect. Do I? Or do I just have your control? He was quiet for a long moment, then. Can't it be both? The honesty stunned me. At least he wasn't pretending, wasn't feeding me pretty lies about how this was anything other than what it was. I want to see my father, I said suddenly. It's been almost a week. He's probably worried. No. The flat refusal made me sit up straight. Excuse me? It's not safe yet. Not until we're certain there are no threats. Threats from who? What are you not telling me? His jaw clenched. Your ex-husband borrowed money from dangerous people, Emma. People who might view you as leverage. Until I'm certain you're protected, you stay close to me. So I'm a prisoner. You're protected, he corrected. There's a difference. Is there? I turned away, staring out the window at the darkness, because from where I'm sitting, it feels exactly the same. We rode the rest of the way in silence. When we arrived home, I went straight to the bedroom, not waiting for him. I changed into my cotton pajamas, washed my face, and crawled into bed, turning my back to his side. I felt him enter the room, heard the rustle of clothes as he changed. The mattress dipped as he slid under the covers beside me. Emma. I didn't answer. Emma, look at me. No. A sigh. Then his hand on my shoulder, gently turning me to face him. In the darkness, his eyes were soft, almost tender. I know this is hard, he said quietly. I know you feel trapped, but I need you to trust that I'm doing this to keep you safe. How can I trust you when you won't even tell me what I need to be safe from? Because some knowledge is dangerous, because the less you know, the less you can be used against me. His thumb brushed across my cheek. I won't let anyone hurt you, Emma. That's a promise I can make. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to trust that this man, this stranger who'd bought me like property, actually cared about my well-being. But trust required honesty, and Dante dealt in secrets and shadows. I want to see my father, I said again, softer this time. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, this weekend, we'll arrange a supervised visit. Supervised? With security present, non-negotiable. It wasn't freedom, but it was something. A small concession that felt like victory. Okay, I whispered. His hand lingered on my face, his eyes searching mine in the darkness. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me, really kiss me, not the controlled performance from our wedding. Part of me wanted him to. Part of me was terrified of what would happen if he did. Instead, he pulled me closer, tucking my head under his chin, his arms wrapping around me in a hold that was possessive and protective all at once. Sleep, Emma, he murmured against my hair. Tomorrow we start again. And despite everything, the fear, the anger, the confusion, I found myself relaxing into his warmth, my eyes growing heavy, my breathing sinking with his. Tomorrow we'd start again. Tomorrow I'd remember all the reasons this was wrong, dangerous, impossible. But tonight, in the darkness and safety of his arms, I let myself pretend that maybe, just maybe, this could work. The week passed in a strange rhythm of performances and private moments that felt increasingly real. Charity galas where Dante's hand never left my waist, business dinners where I learned to read the subtext in conversations about imports and logistics, quiet mornings where we shared coffee in the sunroom, not speaking, just existing in each other's space. And every night, we shared that massive bed, the distance between us shrinking incrementally. His arm around my waist, my head on his chest, small intimacies that felt monumental. Friday arrived with the promise he'd made, a visit to see my father. I dressed carefully in a simple dress Lucia had selected, trying to look happy, successful, like a woman whose life hadn't been completely upended. The drive to my father's house felt surreal. I'd lived in this neighborhood my whole life, but now, arriving in a bulletproof Mercedes with security following in separate vehicles, I felt like an alien visiting a foreign planet. My father stood on the porch of his modest home, his face lighting up when he saw me emerge from the car. He'd aged in the past week. New lines around his eyes, more gray in his hair. Guilt twisted in my chest. Emma! He pulled me into a hug that smelled like coffee and the cheap aftershave he'd worn my entire life. Oh, sweetheart, I've missed you. I've missed you too, Dad. My voice cracked. Dante appeared beside me, and my father's expression shifted. Delight mixed with something like intimidation. They'd never actually met. All of my father's knowledge of my husband came from phone calls and the sudden influx of money into the business. Mr. Hartley. Dante extended his hand, his smile warm and genuine in a way I'd never seen before. It's a pleasure to finally meet you properly. Please, call me Richard. My father shook his hand, clearly overwhelmed. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for the business. Those contracts, the new financing, it saved us. Family helps family, Dante said smoothly. Emma's success is my success. The lies flowed so easily, I wondered if he even registered them anymore, or if the performance had become so ingrained it was indistinguishable from reality. We sat in my father's living room, the worn furniture I'd grown up with suddenly seeming shabby compared to the luxury I now lived in. My father made tea with shaking hands, clearly nervous, and I helped him in the kitchen like I had 1,000 times before. He's very impressive, my father whispered. Are you happy, Emma? The question caught me off guard. Was I happy? I was safe. Protected. My father's business was thriving. I had everything I'd agreed to this marriage for, but happy? I'm adjusting, I said carefully. It's a big change. He treats you well? I thought about Dante's possessive touches, his careful control, the way he held me at night like I might disappear. Yes, he's good to me. It wasn't entirely a lie. He was good to me, in his way. Controlling, yes. Demanding, absolutely. But never cruel, never violent. And increasingly, I caught glimpses of something softer beneath the ice. Concern when I was tired, amusement when I challenged him, something almost like tenderness in quiet moments. We returned to the living room where Dante sat reviewing something on his phone. But he put it away immediately when we entered. The security guard stationed outside the window made my father nervous, his eyes darting to the armed man every few minutes. The visit was brief. Dante made it clear we had other obligations. But it was enough. Enough to see my father smile again, to hear about the business thriving, to remember why I'd made this choice. As we were leaving, my father pulled me aside. He loves you, he said quietly. I can see it in the way he looks at you. I wanted to laugh, to explain that Dante didn't love me, that this was all a transaction, a business arrangement with an expiration date. But my father looked so happy, so relieved, that I just hugged him and said nothing. In the car, Dante's hand found mine, his thumb brushing across my knuckles. That went well. You were very convincing, was I? His eyes met mine, and I saw something unreadable there. Maybe I wasn't acting. Before I could process that, his phone rang. He answered in rapid Italian, his expression darkening with each word. When he hung up, the warmth was gone, replaced by something cold and dangerous. Change of plans, he said to the driver. Take us to the warehouse. What's wrong? I asked. Business. The single word was a wall, shutting me out. We drove to an industrial area I'd never seen before, pulling up to a massive warehouse surrounded by more security than seemed reasonable. Dante turned to me, his expression serious. Stay in the car. Don't get out for any reason. Dante? Emma. His hand cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. Please, for once, just trust me and do as I ask. The fear in his voice, subtle but real, made me nod. He kissed my forehead, a gesture so unexpected it stole my breath, then disappeared into the warehouse with half the security team. I sat in the car with the remaining guard, watching the building like it might explode. Minutes ticked by. 5, 10, 15, then gunshots. I screamed, lurching forward, but the guard's hand on my shoulder held me in place. Stay down, Mrs. Moretti. More shots, shouting in Italian. The guard was on his radio, calling for backup, his gun drawn and pointed at the warehouse entrance. Every second lasted an eternity. I pressed my hands over my mouth, trying not to scream, trying not to imagine Dante bleeding out on a concrete floor somewhere. Then he appeared in the doorway, very much alive, his suit jacket gone and blood on his white shirt, my blood on his shirt. His eyes found the car immediately, and I saw relief flash across his face before the mask slammed back down. He strode to the car, yanked the door open, and pulled me out, his hands running over me frantically. Are you hurt? Did anyone get close to the car? I'm fine. Dante, you're bleeding. It's not my blood. He pulled me against his chest, one hand in my hair, the other wrapped around my waist so tight I could barely breathe. It's not my blood, he repeated, and I felt him shaking. Security vehicles poured into the lot. Men in suits emerged from the warehouse, and I caught a glimpse of bodies being dragged out. Bodies. "Oh, God," I whispered. "Don't look." Dante turned my face into his chest, shielding me. "Don't look, Emma." But I'd already seen enough to understand what kind of man I'd married, what kind of world I'd entered. He bundled me back into the car, barking orders in Italian to the men surrounding us. We left in a convoy, sirens wailing in the distance but never coming closer. Someone had clearly been paid to look the other way. "What happened?" I demanded once we were moving. Dante's jaw clenched. "Your ex-husband tried to have you killed." The world tilted. "What?" "Marcus." His hands were fists on his knees, white-knuckled with rage. "He found out you'd married me. Thought if you were dead, he could claim rights to Hartley Textiles through some legal loophole. He hired people to grab you during the visit to your father's house." Horror washed over me in waves. "But we weren't. We changed plans. I know. We got lucky." His eyes met mine, and I saw fury and fear warring there. "He won't try again." "Why not?" "Because he's dead." The flat statement hung in the air between us. I should have felt something. Shock, horror, sadness for the man I'd once loved enough to marry. Instead, I felt nothing but a hollow relief. "You killed him," I said. "I protected what's mine. No apology. No regret. Just cold fact. There are consequences for that." From me. We drove in silence, the weight of what had happened settling over us like a shroud. When we arrived home, Dante practically carried me inside, shouting for the doctor, for Lucia, for everyone to leave us alone. In our bedroom, he sat me on the edge of the bed and knelt before me, his hands on my knees, his eyes searching my face. "Talk to me. Yell at me. Something. I don't know what to feel," I admitted. My voice sounded hollow, distant. I should be horrified, traumatized. But all I can think is that you saved me. That if you hadn't changed plans, if you hadn't had all that security, don't. His hands tightened on my knees. "Don't think about what might have happened. You're safe. That's all that matters." "Is it?" I looked down at him, this dangerous man kneeling before me like a supplicant. "How many people have you killed, Dante?" "Enough that one more doesn't keep me awake at night." Brutal honesty. "But this one was personal. He tried to take you. He tried to hurt what's mine." "I'm not yours," I said, but the protest was weak. "Yes, you are." He stood, pulling me up with him, his hands framing my face. "You've been mine since the moment you got in my car. Since you said yes to marrying me. Since you let me hold you every night and pretended it meant nothing. It doesn't." "Liar." His thumb traced my lower lip. "You feel it too. This thing between us. It started as a transaction, yes, but it's become something else, something real." "You're just saying that because what? Because I'm convenient? Because I'm possessive?" His laugh was bitter. "I've had arrangements before, Emma. Women who played the role of wife or girlfriend for appearances. It never felt like this. Never made me want to burn the world down to keep them safe. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might crack a rib." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that somewhere between the wedding and tonight, this stopped being an arrangement." His forehead pressed against mine, his breath warm on my lips. "I'm saying that the thought of losing you made me understand what it means to actually care about someone more than yourself. I'm saying that I love you, Emma, and I don't know when it happened or how. But it's real." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "You can't. This was supposed to be temporary." 1 year and then, fuck the arrangement. Fuck the timeline. Fuck everything except this. His lips found mine, and this kiss was nothing like the controlled performance at our wedding. This was desperation and fear and something raw that tasted like truth. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his blood-stained shirt, pulling him closer. All the fear and anger and confusion of the past week poured into that kiss, transforming into something else entirely. Want. Need. The terrifying realization that I'd fallen for my captor. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine again. "Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not insane. You're insane. I whispered, and possessive, and controlling, and terrifying. But I think I love you too. The admission felt like jumping off a cliff. I don't know how it happened. You're everything I should run from, everything I should hate. But when I thought you might be hurt in that warehouse, when I heard those gunshots, he kissed me again. Softer this time, almost reverent. You're staying. Not for a year. Forever. That wasn't the deal. I'm changing the deal. His smile was small, genuine. The first real smile I'd seen from him. Marry me again. For real this time. Not because of business or debts or desperation. Because you want to. Because you choose me. We're already married. Then let's make it mean something. He pulled back slightly, his hands still cradling my face. Let's have the wedding we should have had. With your father there. With real vows. With a future instead of an expiration date. It was insane. I barely knew this man. This killer. This criminal. This dangerous stranger who'd bought me to save appearances. Every logical part of my brain screamed that this was wrong. That I was falling for my captor. That this was just Stockholm Syndrome dressed up as romance. But my heart, that traitorous, foolish organ, knew differently. Knew that Dante had protected me, valued me, seen me when the rest of the world had looked past me. Knew that his possessiveness came from a place of genuine care. Knew that despite everything, despite the violence and the danger and the lies, he'd never once made me feel small. Okay, I whispered. His eyes widened. Okay? Okay. I pulled him down for another kiss, this one initiated by me, claiming him the way he'd claimed me. Let's do it. Let's make this real. The smile that broke across his face transformed him. For a moment, he looked young, almost vulnerable. And I saw the man beneath the monster, the man who'd been alone for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to be chosen. I'm going to make you so happy, he promised against my lips. I'm going to give you everything. The business, the security, the life you deserve. I just want you, I said. The real you. Not the performance, not the masks. Just Dante. You have me. His hand slid down to my waist, pulling me flush against him. You've had me from the start. I just didn't know it yet. That night we didn't sleep. We talked. Really talked, for the first time since we'd met. He told me about his childhood, growing up in a world where violence was currency, and trust was a weakness. About building his empire from nothing. About the enemies he'd made and the prices he'd paid. About how lonely it was at the top, surrounded by people who wanted something from him but never seeing the man beneath the reputation. I told him about my marriage to Marcus, about the slow erosion of my self-worth, about feeling invisible in my own life. About the desperation that had driven me into that support group, onto that rainy street, into his path. I'm glad you weren't looking, he said, his fingers tracing patterns on my skin. Glad you stepped into traffic. Glad you were desperate enough to say yes. I should probably be offended by that. You should. He kissed my temple. But you're not, because you're glad too. He was right. Despite everything, the violence, the danger, the utterly unconventional way we'd come together. I was glad. Glad to have found someone who saw me, valued me, chose me. The real wedding happened 3 weeks later. Small, intimate, with only the people who truly mattered. My father, crying openly as he walked me down the aisle. Francesca, who'd grudgingly admitted that maybe I was stronger than I looked. Lucia, who'd become something like a friend. A handful of Dante's associates who were more family than business. This time, my dress was white. This time, there were flowers and music, and vows we'd written ourselves. This time, when Dante kissed me, it meant everything. I promise to protect you, he said, his voice rough with emotion, to value you, to never make you feel invisible, to build a life with you, not a performance. I promise to trust you, I responded. Tears streaming down my face, to challenge you, to see the man beneath the reputation, to choose you, every day, for the rest of my life. When the judge pronounced us husband and wife, again, the whole room erupted in applause. My father hugged us both, whispering his blessing. Francesca actually smiled, pulling me aside to say that perhaps I was exactly what her stubborn son needed. The reception was held at the house. Our house, I was finally beginning to think of it. And it felt less like a museum and more like a home. We danced in the garden under strings of lights, surrounded by people who were learning to accept our strange love story. Happy? Dante murmured against my ear as we swayed to music that was too slow and too romantic. Deliriously, I admitted. You? More than I thought possible. His arms tightened around me. Thank you. For what? For saying yes. For staying. For seeing past the monster to the man. I pulled back to look at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd stolen me from despair and given me a purpose. You're not a monster, Dante. You're just complicated. And you love complicated. I love you. I corrected. The complicated is just part of the package. He kissed me then, deep and slow and full of promise, while our guests cheered and the future stretched before us like an open road. 6 months later, I stood in that same garden, my hand on my still flat stomach, watching Dante conduct business with his associates. He looked up, catching my gaze, and the smile that crossed his face was pure joy. We hadn't planned it, the baby, but Dante had been thrilled when I'd told him. Had immediately tripled security, hired the best doctors, turned half the West Wing into a nursery. You're going to spoil this child rotten, I'd told him. Damn right I am, he'd responded, his hand covering mine on my stomach. Our child, our family, our future. Francesca had actually cried when we'd told her, pulling me into a hug and whispering apologies for doubting me. The business was thriving under joint management, Dante's connections and my father's expertise combining into something remarkable. Everything I'd hoped to save by marrying Dante had been saved. But more than that, I'd found something I hadn't known I was looking for. A partner, a protector, a man who loved me fiercely and completely, who saw my strength and valued it, who made me feel visible for the first time in my life. As the sun set over our garden, painting everything in shades of gold and amber, Dante crossed to me and pulled me into his arms. What are you thinking about? About how this all started, I said. About stepping off that curb without looking. About being desperate enough to get in a stranger's car. Regretting it? Not even a little bit. I turned in his arms, looping my hands around his neck. You saved me, Dante. In every way a person can be saved. We saved each other, he corrected, his hand settling possessively over my stomach where our child grew. You gave me a reason to be more than what I was, to want more than power and control. You gave me a family. We're going to have a good life, I said, certain of it in a way I'd never been certain of anything. We're going to have an extraordinary life, he promised. You, me, this baby, and however many more children you'll let me give you, one at a time, I laughed. But I was already imagining it, a house full of children, of laughter, of life. A future built on the strangest foundation but solid nonetheless. That night, as we lay in our bed, the one we'd shared for months now, the distance long since erased, Dante held me close and whispered promises into my hair, promises of protection and devotion and love that would last beyond any contract, any arrangement, any deal. And I believed him, because I'd learned that beneath the danger and the darkness, Dante Moretti was a man who kept his promises, who valued loyalty above all else, who loved with the same intensity he brought to everything else in his life. I'd married a stranger to save my family's business. I'd ended up saving myself, and in the process, I'd found something I'd stopped believing existed, true love in the most unlikely of places. As I drifted off to sleep, safe in my husband's arms, I thought about that rainy night when I'd stepped into traffic without looking, when I'd made the split-second decision that had changed everything. I'd been terrified then, lost, desperate. Now I was found, cherished, home. And it all began with a simple word, spoken in fear but leading to everything I'd never known I needed. Yes.